Hello again. Welcome to another episode of the Uranium Market Minute. Today is Wednesday, January 12th, and this is episode number 62. My name is Justin Hune. I am your host. I'm the founder and publisher of the Uranium Insider Pro newsletter, the only investing newsletter that focuses solely on uranium and publishes on a regular monthly basis. Thank you again for tuning in. As always, nothing in this video is intended to be investing advice. I'm not your financial advisor. This is not financial advice. Please always do your own due diligence when it comes to investing and always take responsibility for your own choices. All right, let's just jump right into the daily scoreboard here. The spot price of uranium flat has not moved in a couple of days here. 45.75 a pound mid-market, still up over $3 a pound year to date in the last couple of weeks, mainly on a big move of Wednesday of last week. But it seems like even with Sprott purchasing some pounds in the market, there's a little bit of supply there. And of course, I mentioned yesterday that there is consistent supply that comes into the spot market. So no need to panic when you see that there's been pounds purchased and the price doesn't go to the moon. So yesterday they purchased another 400,000 pounds. They raised $388,000 through their ATM. They now have purchased 2.15 million pounds this year so far. A huge start to the year for Sprott. And they've raised over 106.1 million in the new year. Fantastic start to the year. They closed at a premium to NAV of 1.09%, a level at which they can issue new shares and take in new investor capital. With the aggressive purchases yesterday, or the last 7 days, excuse me, they've worked its treasury down to 35.7 million in cash currently. Then they're just over 1% premium to NAV, which means basically they need to raise more cash in order to buy more shares at this point, as they likely will not draw down that cash reserve much further than it already has. Since last year, the 17th of August, they've acquired 25.1 million pounds of uranium, and they've raised over 1.1 billion in new capital. Again, they have allocated access to 3.5 billion total through their ATM. Looking at the sector equity ETFs, URA reported no change in outstanding shares. URNM reported an increase of 75,000 shares. Interestingly, both closed near their all-time highs in outstanding shares. URNM's increase in shares gave rise to 5.7 million in mandated buying. Combined AUM stood at 2.04 billion, and that's still quite a ways down from the November high. So we continue to consolidate sideways here, but the outstanding shares are right up there near the all-time highs. Let's go ahead and take a look at the charts today. URA with an hour left trading in the day looks like it's printing a reversal candle here. We could see some downside chop still. The sentiment seems to be mixed despite the really overwhelming positive factors in the market, the fundamental factors in the market. Volume's ticking up a bit here, but still we're still stuck in this kind of sideways consolidation here that we've had for almost a month. So stuck in that pattern. Really, this is nothing to be concerned about. The sector is holding up quite well. It's actually outperformed the S&P so far, which is a good sign year to date. And so far, this consolidation looks like it's just moving sideways, waiting for the next move, the next big move, the next big flush of cash to come into the space. Sprott Physical Uranium Trust printing yet another candle. That is 5 in a row. Yet another hammer, excuse me. Dips continue to be bought. This is a sign of a bull market. When you see the stock sell off intraday, and the dips being bought. This looks to me like investors have an expectation that a big move is coming, and they believe that the money going into this trust, when it's at a premium to NAV, will lead to physical uranium purchases, which it will. Really good sign, very nice looking chart. Most likely, as I've stated multiple times in the past, consolidation patterns tend to break out in the direction of the overall trend. So in this case, let's look at that 200-day moving average. The overall trend is up. We expect this to be an up move in the Sprott Physical Uranium Trust going forward. Going to the mailbag, I actually just want to address a couple of general questions that came in rather than specific questions, and turning some comments into questions here. So number one, I just want to note the Sprott situation in terms of their buying. Basically what we're looking at is they had a very, very quiet December, right? They only acquired 300,000 pounds in the entire month of December. Over the first 6 trading days of 2022, they've acquired 2.15 million pounds, and they raised over 100 million in new capital. So What does this mean? Essentially, this means that what we were expecting, which was new money would come into the space, not necessarily in a huge flood, but just consistently with a general uptick in sentiment. And we believe, our supply and demand modeling for 2022 was very, very conservative in terms of an estimated Sprott purchasing for the year. Now, considering they purchased over 2 million pounds in under 2 weeks of trading, the implications for this are really, really huge. And as I've mentioned a few times, the supply demand situation, as lined out by ultra conservative UXC, sees a 200 million pound demand for 2022 alone. And that's just a structural demand of what's literally being burned in the reactors and initial core loads, plus a bit of inventory restocking. 200 million pounds, that doesn't include financial demand or secondary demand. So every single pound that Sprott is purchasing from the market, whether or not it directly moves the spot price that day, is sort of irrelevant. Okay, it's hugely important that any of this excess supply is being consumed by this vehicle. In terms of the uranium bullish investing thesis, of course, has different implications for the nuclear fuel market. But from an investing standpoint, every pound they purchase is a win for us. And so I'm seeing the rate at which they're purchasing. Do we expect that to continue every single week for the whole year? Of course not. We'll probably go through cycles of multiple weeks at a premium to NAV, multiple days, if not weeks, at a discount to NAV, like we saw in December. So it's going to ebb and flow. But so far, so good this year. And that's a really positive sign. That's really what we were hoping to see at the beginning of the year. There was another couple of questions coming in about Kazakhstan. What are we seeing out there currently? There were two newsworthy items that came out yesterday in Kazakhstan. The first is that President Tokayev announced his intention to increase taxes on mining companies. Well, while the state technically owns 75% of Kazatomprom, it doesn't really make much difference if they get the revenues from the taxes or from profit distributions. So I don't think this really moves the needle in terms of rising prices. Of course, we don't really know what those taxes are going to look like if they will be implemented, the higher taxation. A general business principle is, these types of costs that are increased unwillingly by the state, let's say, increased taxation, oftentimes that gets passed on to the consumer. So if the taxation is heavy that comes in, it's possible that the pricing of the uranium sold will have to rise in order to maintain the margins that Kazatomprom and their JV companies have from production in the country. But it's impossible to speculate on that right now. But it was an interesting piece of news. Additionally, in a very confusing announcement from the president, seemed to indicate the national fund that holds a 75% interest in Kazatomprom would be liquidated. I don't know how speculative this is. I don't know how trustworthy the news source was of this piece of news, but here's what we know at this time. He's making moves seemingly to consolidate his power, has made several moves to nominalize the power of previous President Nazarbayev, who ran the country from 91 to 2019. So that's something that's clearly apparent. And we've also seen that Kazatomprom has made comments that operations are running normally, but there have been disruptions in receiving key supplies. So despite all the speculation, all these different news stories that are coming in, it's impossible to tell how this is going to play out exactly. My prediction would be, at least in the short to midterm, there's likely to not be interruptions, okay? I don't think Kazatomprom is going to default on their deliveries. I don't think that that there's going to be significant hindrance to supply. I don't think that there's going to be a ramping of supply. This is probably, I don't want to call it a nothing burger because there's been such terrible unrest and hundreds of lives lost, and it's clearly the situation clearly has some hair on it, right? So I think that going forward, pretty much the only thing we can really assume is that there are now some risks associated with this jurisdiction that didn't exist 2 weeks ago. There's possibly increased security of supply concerns for utilities going forward, having to do with the unrest and the politics of this particular country. I think that there's much more going on behind the scenes than what's being stated in not only the mainstream headlines, but kind of these fringe headlines. Kazakhstan is an absolutely key country that sits between China and Russia. China has their Belt and Road Initiative. that China actually offered to help quell the insurgency. That was turned down, of course, and they brought Russia in instead. This is this is a political hotbed, this country, and it's very, very rich in resources, and of course, importantly, in uranium, with China going all out building nuclear, Russia having the largest exporting contract book in terms of building reactors, supplying the fuel for nuclear exports to countries around the world. Rosatom has a huge export book. So this is a key country, and it's likely that there will be some political turmoil in the future. And I think that the situation of the past 2 weeks has highlighted that potential. So I think despite everything that's going on, it's really difficult to speculate on exactly how it's going to play out. But at the very least, it's pretty clear that we can say that going forward, there are risks to this jurisdiction now that weren't there before. Okay, that's plain to see. I don't think that's a controversial statement to make. And again, I honestly, most concerned about the people in the country and really what went down in the past couple of weeks. So we're going to continue to watch it. In the meantime, it looks like in terms of uranium production, et cetera, things are relatively stabilizing, but it's still kind of too early to tell. So we'll keep our eye on it. Anything else comes up, I will let you know in upcoming uranium market minutes. Lastly, there's been a number of comments, all of this positive news, and the stocks aren't moving. So I would say the biggest enemy of long-term investing success is short-term expectations. And if you have a long-term outlook for uranium, then you really need to think in terms of a long-term outlook. You need to look at the catalysts for the year that are expected. And I'm going to go pretty in detail of some interesting aspects of what I see happening for this particularly year in tomorrow's webinar for Uranium Insider Pro members. But short-term expectations really are the enemy of long-term success. Okay, so something that I have done in the past is I have, and I still do this to some extent, although my focus has become more on my long-term investments because I've become more able and willing to ride the volatility with less emotional reaction. But in the past, when I had trouble with watching the short-term volatility, especially in the uranium market, what I would do is I would have a separate account with a smaller amount of money that I would have for short-term trading, okay? Just to keep myself busy, just to keep the monkey busy with the toy, right? You have a trading account where you can, play around with options and you can trade different sectors. You can do some momentum trading and some swing trading, some trend following stuff. And then you also have this other basket of long-term investments that you can add to as you wish and just kind of ignore. I mean, maybe you'll look at them every day, maybe you look at them once a week, but you don't necessarily concern yourself with the ups and downs that are happening on a daily basis. So a lot of the positive fundamentals in the space that we're seeing, EU green taxonomy inclusion of nuclear, which is almost guaranteed at this point, the Sprott Physical Uranium Trust taking over URNM next month, Sprott getting an NYSE listing for SPUT, the secondary demand coming into the spot market. I mean, there's so many, just like the acceptance of nuclear as green. It's a growth sector. China building 150 reactors in the next 14 years, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of these things, your natural expectation is that how can all of this happen fundamentally and the stocks are flat today? You can't look at it like that. You have to take a longer term outlook for this. And this really is a longer term play, okay? So even with SPUT getting an NYSE listing, let's say early Q3, that's my expectation, or sometime in Q3 probably. It's still, after that happens, that's when we get into the further innings of this ball game, okay? We're still in the early innings. This is still, even though a lot of these stocks are up pretty substantially from last year, from 18, 24 months ago, this is still the early innings. This is still, as far as I'm concerned, the accumulation stage, okay? So if you're new to this, great. If you just arrived at the uranium investing thesis, great. This is still the accumulation stage, even though we're in probably the second or third inning. The real fireworks happen in the 7th, 8th, and 9th innings. And the 5th and 6th innings, even the 4th inning, those are coming, okay? I think we get to inning 3, 4, maybe even 5 by the end of the year. I would say even by the second half of next year, we're probably in inning 4 and 5 would be my guess. Okay. So this is still accumulation stage, and be patient with yourself. If you need investments to move right now, you're in the wrong sector. Just stop watching these videos. Just ignore uranium. If you think that you were trying to trade around seasonality, trying to trade around hopeful potential Kazatomprom interruptions, this is not the sector for you. This is a multi-year play. This is minimum 24 months. Okay. And probably more like 2 to 3 years, maybe longer. It really depends on what happens between now and then. But as of right now, I'm not expecting to sell anything for quite some time. And I'm still accumulating personally. And so I just wanted to make a comment on that, if you think that the sector, the stocks that you hold should be moving right now, just because we've seen a bunch of bullish tweets on really, truly fantastic fundamentals, or I keep speaking about them on a daily basis, then your expectations are skewed, and you should really sit back. If you do want exposure to the sector, accumulate into this basket that you just don't trade on a daily basis. You don't stress about on a daily basis. You need to put a couple $1,000s in a Robinhood account so that you can keep busy and stop looking at your uranium stocks that you're holding. Just do it. Keep yourself busy. This is a longer term trade. So I just wanted to talk about that. Again, lastly, I won't be here tomorrow, as we do have our January members webinar. As I've mentioned before, we go deep into the sector. We go deep into all of these elements that I just speak about for 10, 15 minutes on a daily basis. We spend 2 hours on. So we go way deep into the weeds. We discuss all of our positions on our focus list portfolio. We discuss potential positions that we will be taking in the near future. We discuss, I'm specifically going to go into a certain outlook that I believe is likely to play out in the coming year and beyond, but I think it's very important for the next 6 months, let's say. So I'm going to be talking about that in the webinar. And then, of course, we will have a special guest from one of the companies that we recommend. He is somebody that is very, very well versed in the sector, very experienced, very intelligent, and is doing a fantastic job with his company. So we're excited to have him. And so if you are a member, we will see you tomorrow, and I'm very much looking forward to it. If you're not a member, we will see you Friday. Thank you for being here. As always, if you like these videos, please if you've been enjoying these videos, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and you will be notified when we publish a new episode, which is almost every day, except for tomorrow. So we will see you Friday. Hope everybody's doing well out there, and take care. Cheers.